Welcome to part 2. In part 1 of this series, we introduced you to the Triumph Trident T160 recommission and ride project and started taking the bike apart. Today, we'll be removing parts of the bike to inspect them. It's really interesting to see how things have deteriorated over time. As we mentioned previously, the bike has been left untouched for 8 years. Not to worry though, we'll fix all this up. Let's get started.
Well, we're back on the T160. First thing we're going to do is take the battery off. Although this battery is dead, there's nothing in it at all, really you should always take your battery off, disconnect it before you do anything really. So we're going to remove the battery. It gives us more access to the oil tank, to the electrics on the side here, to the cool bank. And once the battery's out, we'll move on to the airbox. When removing the battery, always make a reference to what the polarity is, whether it's positive earth or negative earth. This is still built up as a positive earth. A lot of people know this, but the older bikes, British bikes, were quite often positive earth. There was a reason for it. It's quite complicated. It was changed. It went backwards and forwards. It's something the Japanese have never done, as far as I know. They've always gone for a negative earth. If you've got a British bike and you've got a modern bike, just be careful you take your battery off, that you put it back on the same way. In any doubt, take your lead and just put a bit of masking tape on there and just put on there a plus or minus, just to make sure. Now this one, as you know, is the negative side. But you see, what can be confusing is it has a fuse, it's got a red wire here. Okay, it's red and black, but it looks red, so you think, you know, it's positive. But that is the negative side. So you always want to make sure when you take it off, you know where it goes when you come to put it back on, because you don't want to connect all this up the wrong way around, so you won't do it any good at all. I like to only have the tools that I need to use really, and if you've taken something apart, put it somewhere where it's out the way. What I don't like is a work environment where you've got tools everywhere. I'd rather do something, put those tools to one side and leave them where you know where they are in order. So if you need something, you can pick it up. If you've got tools around your workstation, you know, it looks a bit messy, and it looks more professional actually if you've got a tidy work environment. So you're using the spanners you need, the here and nothing else. Okay, you've been watching me struggle a little bit because the airbox is held on with these two studs mainly. These two studs run from the front of the bank of carburettors and they hold the whole of the airbox assembly on. It's difficult trying to get a ring spanner or a socket on the front here to undo this. It's easier to actually wind the lock nut off. Once you've slackened this off and you've got the stud moving, well, the bolt actually, I wind the nut right up to the end and undo the whole assembly from here. When you come to undo your manifold rubbers, I'm undoing the front ones first that go onto the stubs, the intake stubs. Sometimes you can break the seal here, a whole lot pushes away, but sometimes you have to take the back one off as well. I think this one's going to come away quite well actually, yes it will do. So basically now we have the choke running onto all three carbs. That comes away, I can take that away complete. The only thing I really need to disconnect now is the main throttle cable. Now what we can see now is over a period of time, these rubbers have actually perished. You see they split here, they've gone hard. So you know, you always need to, always check these. You find on modern bikes as well, they do break down. They go hard and they will deteriorate, but these have gone quite badly. So yeah, but we're gonna, as we already mentioned, all this lot will be stripped down. But what's quite nice is there's a carb bank. So when we come to set this lot up, we can actually do it all on the bench. We get all the cutaways moving at the same time. We just need to synchronize all this at the end. Now what we'll check out is these slides. There's a bit of scoring there, but I think all this really needs just a really good overhaul. What we're going to do now is just really put paper in the manifolds and on the breather here. So we're going to give this a good blowout of an airline, because around here it looks like there's been a lot of vermin in the past. There's droppings everywhere. So before we do anything else, just blow off the surface and try and get all this loose material away. Because what we intend to do in a moment is just remove this top cover, which goes over the starter motor. So there'll be a load of crud underneath there. Then what we'll do is take the rocker boxes off. So we're just going to peace of mind so nothing goes in there. We'll just put the plugs back in just to stop any debris going down into the head. It's okay, we've blown that out now. Now, before we started, we didn't wash it down because basically with all this, you know, it's had vermin around here and a lot of debris. It wouldn't have washed out properly. It's easier, it's safer. We didn't want water laying in here, getting this wet. It is dry. It's not very nice with all this debris around here, but it's better keeping it dry. And when we got this down to where we want to be, we can give it a good clean up with some duck oil or something first and wipe it all over. We use brake cleaner, but I'd rather keep this dry. Oh, British bikes. There's always been that interest with the more simple machines, really, because if you own a British bike, you do work on it yourself. You have to, and because I'm a mechanic, and that came with my early years. I wanted to be a mechanic in my working career. But yeah, I think really it's in you, and you'll find that from an early age. If you're drawn to taking things apart and cleaning things up and making them work. This all started off, and I'll be honest with you, with a bicycle bell. I would have only been very, very small. I was on a tricycle and the bell stopped working, and I took the bell apart and put it back together and it worked. And that's my first mechanical involvement. I made something work, and just taking that simple thing apart, I've gone through a career of being a mechanic, and now I'm doing something now that I enjoy. And at my age now, I still get a kick out of doing this sort of thing. You have a passion. And if that passion is in something like this, and you want to do this in your later life, do it. Great. It's never too late, and you're never too old, you know. Enjoy this sort of thing, and yeah, it's keeping machinery alive, really. As I say, always take your time. Never rush things. You don't have to. And I think as you get older, you realise that. Walk away from it, have a cup of tea, come back to it. You'll find it'll be easier. There's something about, as with a puzzle, you can't find that piece of puzzle. You walk away from it, make a cup of tea, you go back to it, sit down, you'll find that piece of puzzle, it goes straight into where you want it to fit. It's funny, it's how life is, really. Just a reference, just tap the rocker cover, just gently, just to break the seal. Good big clearance on there. Little tap. When I remove a rocker cover, I'm always curious to see what clearance there is on the valve, if it's on the right sequence, to see if it's got a gappy. Gives you an indication of obviously when it was last night serviced. We noticed on the exhaust one, it's quite a big, where it felt it, quite a bit of movement on the right hand one. But yeah, no, it's okay. We look at the condition of the adjusters too, see if they've been slightly rounded off. And you can see there's little bits of marks on here, but it's okay. But we're going to take those rocker boxes off in a moment, and then we can take the tubes out. Yeah, years ago people used to strip engines down and decoke engines, but this era we started doing less work on engines on a routine basis. I mean, all you really need to do on this really would be oil filter. Then you can do your tappets, but you know, head work was not as frequent as it used to be years ago on the side valves. You used to drop the valves out on the side valve, and big old singles back in the 30s and 40s. But when you got into the 50s more, engines were getting better. They didn't need quite so much pulling down. Okay, if they were being hammered hard, probably a lot more stripping down and building engines up, and they're getting blown up. And of course now oils are much better now. Lubrication is much better in modern oils, and we don't really see so much wear and tear. This may well have been a part before, because we've just taken one bolt out of the rocker box. There's no washer on this side, so it's possible it's had a little bit of work done to it in the past. But we'll know a bit more when we've got this apart. This is the pushrod tubes. Now on the top here, we've got a different type of seal. This is like a neoprene seal, this one. And on the bottom one, it's a rubber seal. I've just noticed on the inlet rocker box cover, it's always marked up. It's got a load of silicone on both these fixings. Now, if you look carefully, down here is cracked, and it's cracked down the side. And underneath that silicone, you can see there's a crack running that way. And that's why silicone's been put around the top there to seal that. Yeah, it's just been over tightened, and you can see where one tappet has come up, it's been banging on the casing here, on this cover. See it cut away here? Then here as well, there's been some contact, which isn't good. But that's all repairable. The covers you can pick up. You always have to be a little bit careful where you go with things, you know, like we knew that the pushrod tube seals are in need of replacement. And you pick up very quickly if there's something else going on, like we're just going to have to take the tops off to do, even if we haven't done the tubes, do the tappet adjustment. So by checking inside the covers and find that cracking, always check everything as it comes apart. You know, have a good look at it, because it's so easy to take something off, put it on the bench, and not take any notice of it, and you're looking at the next bit to take apart. Have a look as you go, because you might find there's something there that you've missed, and you come to rebuild the engine, a cover which should just go on, you go and put it back on and think, oh, it's got a crack in it, you know. Just check as you go, make sure all your components have been checked thoroughly and cleaned down, and then obviously, if you're doing it for yourself, you covered yourself. So you need to be very sure where you're going, always. We can just pull the tubes out now. No, I'm not worried about the rocker box gasket, it's got to be replaced, it's damaged anyway. So we just have to pull that up, and it just needs to come through there like that. And same with this one, we should be able to get this out on an angle. If it doesn't, we can just slacken the head off. Yeah, that one won't come out at the moment. We'll just do this other side. We've got the 4 remaining bolts undone, we're just going to pull these out. And what we'll do in a moment, I'll just put these bolts down so we can just see if the head is loose. If it's not, we just give it a little gentle tap. We'll just move it to one side a little bit, then we can get these other 2 tubes out. So we'll carefully give it a little tap. Just be careful where you tap. A little bit on the other side, just lift it up if you can. There you go, just use a plastic hammer always, or a hide hammer. But just be careful what you're tapping, really. Might be able to rock that now. Okay. Just going to lift it up. I'll just take these tubes out. Just make sure everything's out of the way. We can just lift that up and take it away. First indication, you can still see the honing marks in the bore here, and it looks nice and clean. We can turn this engine over just to make sure we've got no debris around first, but it looks good. It's always worth, like saying it's been around, not being used for this amount of time, it's a good idea to get it down to this level. You've got a good look at the engine to tell what the engine's like from looking inside. We wouldn't, if you've only just taken the rocker boxes off, you wouldn't know what the bores are like. So we can tell now a lot about this engine. We can feel how tight the pistons are, you know, and we can see there's no scoring in the bores as such. But we'll be able to turn this engine over and get a better look. And looking at those bores, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. So that's nice. It feels nice. There is no movement. So it's a good engine. Okay, everyone knows that there's a little bit of carbon, there's a little bit of burnt oil on the top here. Doesn't mean to say the engine's worn at all. As we've mentioned before, we have a certain amount of oil will go down the valve guide. It will go into the engine as well. But this is nothing to worry about. It's just a little bit wet here. You know, short runs are not always good for a bike anyway, for an engine. When you come to disconnecting any wires, always make a reference to the routing of cables or wiring. So just take a photo on your, with your phone, really. So when we come put it back together, I'm not going to be wasting time chasing wires through and everything else. I know where it's going to go. What we've got to do is make up a longer Allen key to remove the lower Allen screw from the starter motor. Now I haven't got anything that long, so I've just cut down an old T-bar which has got a right Allen key in the end of it. So we'll just extend this. What I do is cut this length off here, we'll just bore in here, set that back up in there, just weld it in place, then just put a T-bar on there. So then we can just torque drive that off. So we're just going to cut this off, stick it in the lathe, bore it out. Okay, so reduce the diameter of this, so we can put an extension in there now. We're just going to put a weld around there. We're welding this up, but the problem is I've run out of argon mixed gas. So I just put a bottle of CO2 on there, and that's why it's very splattery, but it doesn't matter, we can just weld this on. What you have to be is very resourceful. Like, we haven't got an extended Allen key, so you have to make something. You have to use your resources and get on with the project. You know, if you're working in an environment where something's broken down in the field, you've got to get it going. So you're pulling all the ideas that you can to actually get that job done. So hence why we're just making do with this CO2 gas. But it'll be okay, just got one more weld to do around here. Yeah, this is the easiest way. I've just drilled a hole in this extension so I can put something in here, which is a punch. So I can actually get a bit of leverage on here. So it's not a brilliant weld because it's the wrong gas, but it gives us that extension now. We should be able to get that Allen screw out. You have to make sure with this engine with electric start, you have to remove the breather out of cover. And there is a back bolt that goes into where you got the solenoid. And you can see the starter motor now has cracked the joint, now it's starting to come away. But because the breather's here, you need to plug that hole with a bit of paper, because if you pull that bolt out from in here, it drops down, it goes down into the engine. So that's why we've got a bit of paper in it at the moment. So right, this shows the Bendix gear, the drive gear that engages. When the starter motor turns over, that rotates and engages into the main gear on the back of the clutch assembly. This wants a good clean up. They're all clean up. We can take this apart and give it a good blowout. But it's not been apart obviously some time. It's not a debris around here. But I think it's all okay. We check that ring gear there is okay. But yeah, it should be all right. But now it's exposed to all the crankcase assembly, so this can have a really good clean up. Okay, we're ready now. We've just dropped out the master cylinder. Feed pipe from the reservoir at the top. We're going to change the fluid, and the pipe is perished. But for the moment, we don't want all the fluid dropping down, dripping it all over the bench. We just get a pair of mole grips, just squeeze it up. So the pipe's got to be replaced anyway, but it just stops that making such a mess everywhere. Just clamp that off. There you go. Now we can check the swing arm now properly. Yeah, we haven't got any movement on there at all, which is good. No, that's good. We can just drop that chain guard off now. It's only got one fastener on the front. We take that out. because I think there's a little bit of welding. It's cracked here on this side, so we'll take that off. We'll drop that off next. Also, we'll take out this rear hugger. We call it hugger really, it's the part of a mudguard. They just do it in plastic now. It just keeps the debris off. So we'll drop that out in one bolt and take the mudguard off. You can get a better view now. It's been welded before across here, look. That's a previous repair. Then here it's cracked. This one's got oil in, the other one didn't have. So hence they need an overhaul, both forks. Okay, we need to drop the fork leg out. So it pulls up into the top yoke in a bit of a taper. So we have an insert, a bit like the cap on the top. And we just wind that in once we've got the bars out of the way. And I can give this a tap on the end, just to release it from the taper. So that should be far enough down. Just give it a nice tap. Shouldn't need a great deal. Back it off a bit more. Hopefully I can put a cable tie here. I'm going to cut that tie off. If we don't pull the bike over. Get my hand on here, just the last little bit to tap it. Just give it a bit more. Hopefully I can just pull this down. There we go. There we go. One fork out. What we was checking for was any corrosion on the stanchion. We call it a stanchion, but it looks good. We'll take this off here. We'll chop this off. This other one here. Then if we just pull, so we'll just get it. I'll probably have to get a screwdriver in there. This is cracked, by the way. This is something that used to happen on these because they're double clamped, and I think what can happen is you can put too much pressure on. It's cracked right through here. It was quite common. So we've got a new one to go on there that he had already had in stock. Just going to put this in here just to clamp it up. Okay, and I just can get underneath here with a screwdriver. I could put a bit of lube on here, but that's got it up. What we're checking is these seals here. Let's take that right up. The top one would be a dust seal. That would come away, and underneath there would probably be a retaining clip. Then the lower oil seal. But they look pretty good. It's dry. What's quite strange is the other fork leg hasn't got any oil in. So it's whether the screw at the bottom, like here, the drain screw was loose, but we'll find out in a moment. But we're looking here for any movement, and that works well. That's good. There's nothing in there to worry about. We just clean that all up. And the gator is serviceable, it's okay. We just put some clips on there. It's fine. It's got a little hole there. It's supposed to have that, or is it all concertinas on itself? You get like a vacuum that lets the air out. But that's in good order, that's okay. So what we do for the moment, we just put a spring back in there and put the cap on there for the moment. Use your palm of your hand. Oh, right, here's the problem here. This seal's gone. You look at here, this is where all the oil's gone. It's probably movement, side movement. Look, you can see the bushes are worn inside, obviously. Dust seal's leaking, so obviously the main seal's gone behind. hence why there's no oil in that fork. Okay, recap to where we are today. We removed the rocker box covers. Now, I'll show you very quickly. We found these cracks and they've been silicone round, so both are like this. They're both cracked, got to be replaced. Rocker boxes, we've got rockers in there. We'll dismantle those another time. Pushrod tubes. Now, I was mentioned about the pushrod tube seals. These type have a fibre washer at the bottom. It's not rubber, it just looked like it was rubber. So you've got a fibre washer, you've got your seal holder, which is like a cup, and you've got this neoprene seal, same top and bottom. But that'd be replaced anyway. Cylinder head. With the rocker boxes, gaskets deteriorated anyway. Well, I haven't looked properly underneath, but you can see the head. And we're going to drop those valves out. There's a bit of carbon in there. I'm sure we'll put this on the surface plate again and go over that. But that looks all good. Really, they're all clean up. We just checked for cracks. Oil cooler, we dropped that off. Hoses have gone hard, they need replacing. Carburetor bank, all came off in one assembly. Overhaul kits to the carburetors because all the gaskets, the float bowl gaskets, all breaking up. They need a seal kit. You know, you get everything. You get your sealing rubbers and your gaskets, and we'll make sure that the float and the needle valves are okay. Fuel lines to be done, replaced, and we'll check the slides, make sure they're not worn badly in the bodies. But that should all be straightforward. Starter motor. So this is a bit cruddy in here, but we'll take the Bendix off. There's a bit of movement here, but it's supported in the case on the front bearing. But we'll give this a good clean out. So take the Bendix off, clean it all out, give that an overhaul. I'm sure that'll be okay. Fork assemblies. We've taken both forks out as you saw in the video. This one's the one that's leaking badly. So we've got a warm bush here and you've seen it already. But what I'm going to say is this plastic cap which goes on the top. Here's your cap, holds the spring in place. Now when you come to release it out the taper out the top yoke assembly, sometimes people will undo this, then wind it back in. Won't take it back out now because you've got a spring underneath it. They will wind that out and they'll give that a tap with a hammer, and you can see where this has been bashed. It's not really a good idea to do that. You can pick up these service tools quite easily. When that's out of there, that cap, that will screw down into the fork leg, into the stanchion. And then, as you saw, we could screw that in, just leaving a little bit of a gap at the top, so it will go down. We give that a tap with a hammer. It will just release that. Also, you can use this tool to draw up that into the taper at the top as well when you come to install these forks. It's just really not really a good idea to, if you're really stuck, a bit of wood on the top of that and give it a whack, but don't go straight on with a hammer. You can see there's some destructional marks there that shouldn't be there, so always be a bit wary of that. So really, this one's going to need, well, they both will, seal kits on both, maybe bushes as well, definitely in that one. But next time we'll probably have the dust seal out, the main seal out, take the clip away, pull it apart, then you can see the bushes inside and see where the wear is. Airbox filter, now that's, yeah, it's past its best. We're going to replace that obviously. Yeah, no issues with that. There was no mice in there. We come to the rear brake master cylinder and caliper. Now the master cylinder will need a proper overhaul. I'm sure it will all clean up okay. We just dropped it straight off. We've taken it off as one. We know the hose is perished. I think we showed that before. And the caliper, that's how it is. We'll give this a good strip down, a good soak. And as long as we can get the pistons moving, we can get an overhaul kit, we can clean all this up, and it should be okay. But that's okay, as far as we can see at the moment. So yeah, a little bit of labour time on that really. Now the shocks, they're in their lowest position, softest position. I've put a proper spanner on here, made sure in the lowest position. We can't move these at all, absolutely solid. Show you next week. I've got some new shocks to show you, but we've tried to move these and there is no movement at all. It'd be like riding a pogo stick if we put those back on. They're not working. They've been obviously standing in that one position, everything's got seized up, But shocks really are quite cheap. We'll put a nice pair of Hagens on there, but we'll show you a bit more next time about the rear shocks, show you comparison. But yeah, that's it really. So, and yeah, the other thing to check if your shocks are okay is your centre rubbers, your silent block rubber. You can push these out, sleeve in the middle, you can replace those, but they are serviceable. But with old shocks, it's always worth taking these out and keeping those as spares. Right, old British bikes, you can sink a lot of time into them. The thing is, when you come to take a bike apart like this today, you have to be really careful that you don't miss anything, because you lift off the cylinder head, just turn it over, have a good look underneath first of all. But it's like any components that, before you just unbolt and put it away to one side, just check it. Like the rocker box covers, you take those off, you expect those to be fine. Well, we found those have been cracked and there's silicone around there. And this is always a reference that it's been opened up before, because sometimes you take a bike apart and it's had a bodge done, and you've come to do other work on it and you found this bad quality of work. Also, take something apart, reference, use your phone, take some photographs, it's worth it. Also, if you're going to do an estimate, make sure you get that right apart. I tend to work as far as I can before I put a list of parts in. When you're doing a job like this, disassemble what you can first, because there might be a component that I think, oh, I've missed that, I need that other part, and you've already put an order in. Wait until you've got everything together and you know where you are. Like I say, everything is in front of you and you've gone right through it all and you service all the bits that are okay, and you're just down to what you're going to need to replace. So wait until you got to that stage. What we're going to do next time is we're going to clean up on this. We're going to get it clean, all the bits will be serviced. With all this stuff, take your time, don't rush it. You need to make sure that you have covered yourself and you know exactly what parts you're going to need before you place your order. And before you reassemble anything, just make sure it's not damaged. You know, there's some things that we pick up and think, yeah, that's all right. Make sure it is okay first, then you'll be fine.